Hey everyone, and welcome to my review of Aliens Fireteam Elite. All of the gameplay you'll see in this video was captured on a PS5 console, but the game is available on PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series consoles, and PC. And this review is going to be a little bit different from what I usually do. Some of my regular viewers will know that I really don't do well with horror or suspense and things like that. And while this game isn't exactly horror, it is based on films that I've never seen and probably would never go anywhere near. With that in mind, I wasn't ever going to buy this game. Luckily, a friend of mine has agreed to step in, play the game, and give me his opinions, which do generally line up with mine in most cases, so thanks a lot to TaylorMade Gaming for the help. I'll still be the one presenting the review to you, but all the gameplay was captured by him, and most of the opinions will be his. From this point onwards, the review will basically play out like normal, but doing videos like this just allows me to give you content that I wouldn't have normally been able to present to you otherwise. And of course, if you do enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're getting really close to that 1,000 subscriber milestone, and with your help, I'm confident that we can reach it. So then, what is Aliens Fireteam Elite? Well, it's a third-person co-op survival shooter from Cold Iron Studios, and it's published by Focus Home Interactive. It's important to note that it is a budget title and serves as a standalone sequel to the original Aliens film trilogy. You play as a colonial marine who you create and build from the ground up. When you first boot up the game, you'll be able to create your marine and customize their looks. Then, once you've finished, you'll be able to select a class. The character that you've just created is not locked to a specific class, so you can use them for any class in the game. Each time you play as a particular class, you'll gain XP for it, and as you level up its rank, you'll be able to unlock space on their perk grid, allowing you to fully customize and optimize your build. The game launches with 5 classes, which are the Gunner, Demolisher, Technician, Doc, and Recon, although Recon is only unlocked after beating the campaign. These classes each bring different weapons, different abilities, and various strengths and weaknesses to the table. As you might expect, some excel at close range, while others are better at distance, and some simply bring bigger guns than others. Each class has its own cosmetics that can be purchased via the in-game shop, or found inside randomized hidden caches. There's 2 separate currencies in the game, credits and script, but thankfully, neither of them can be bought with real-world money. As you battle through various missions, dropping hundreds of Xenos, you'll also be gaining XP for the weapons rank. Each weapon can level up and unlock different bonuses, which are shown as a star rating. Each weapon starts at 0 stars, but the more you use it and the more XP you gain for it, the more stars it will earn. The first 3 stars on a weapon usually grant a pretty standard bonus like 5% stability or something like that, while the 4th star tends to be a little bit more powerful. Each weapon has multiple mod slots for various attachments that can improve its performance, and a slot for a weapon skin or decal. Weapon skins and attachments can also be found in the in-game shop, given as rewards for completing a mission or inside hidden caches. Some other things you'll be able to acquire are consumable items such as turrets, mines, and area of effect grids, which all have various elements tied to them, such as fire or cryo. As I said, these are consumable and will be used up when deployed, but you do find them relatively often, and they don't disappear between missions, so you can save them up on the easier difficulties in preparation for the harder difficulties. During the missions, you'll be completing various objectives while fending off countless xenomorphs who desperately want to eat your face. The Xenos come in a variety of flavors, 11 different ones in fact, ranging from facehuggers to Praetorians. Each one was designed to behave in its own unique way and therefore force you to adapt and implement various strategies in order to survive, especially on the harder difficulties. To increase the rewards you receive at the end of a mission, you can make use of the game's challenge card system. These cards are consumable, and when used at the start of a mission will add restrictions to you and your team. However, they'll also grant a nice reward if you manage to complete that run. The restrictions can range from not being able to move while aiming down the sights, not being allowed to take any damage at all, and many more in between. The rewards are generally things like double or triple XP or more credits. One thing to note is that only 1 card can be used per mission, but from what I understand, if you're in a team of 3 real players, only 1 player's card can be active for the whole team. If, for example, all 3 players try to use a card on the same mission, the game will randomly pick one of those 3 and the other 2 cards will be lost. And speaking of real players, ideally the game is designed to be played with a fire team of 3, but the game does offer matchmaking and AI bots to fill out the empty spaces if you want to play with random people or simply want to play solo. And I think by this point you should have a decent understanding of what the game is, so let's move into the personal opinion stuff. Most of the following opinions were formed from my friend's time with the game and from us having an extensive conversation about it. So the first positive thing I'd like to mention is that you're given very detailed information on the various difficulties that the game has to offer. A lot of the times games just say easy, medium and hard, which really doesn't tell you that much. This game has 5 difficulty levels, 2 of which are locked at the start of the game, but they give you a lot to consider when you're selecting what kind of experience you want to have. For example, if you set it to casual, enemies have less health, they'll deal less damage to you, AI teammates will be stronger, and you can revive your allies faster and as many times as you like. Then again, on the intense difficulty setting, there are quite a few changes, such as Xenomorph's acid being deadlier, your shots can actually deal slight friendly fire damage to your teammates, enemies deal more damage to you and they have more health, max ammo is reduced, and much more besides. This difficulty even warns you that AI teammates are not recommended for that level of challenge. In all honesty, I thought it was good that it wasn't just a case of enemies are more spongy. And of course that is a certain part of the difficulty increase, but of course if you build your character properly, it can be somewhat mitigated. Another thing that I thought was really cool was the sheer amount of detailed stats and customization throughout the game. The weapons especially have so many different stats on them, including things like damage fall off, which reduces your weapon damage the further away you are from the target. Now of course a lot of games have stats like this, it's nothing new, but there's just so many things you can do with them. You can get lots of different attachments to increase your range or perhaps keep a strong weapon more stable, and as I mentioned earlier, the weapons themselves increase in rank and get passive bonuses. Plus, you get multiple choices of weapon for each class, and all of them can be leveled and optimized. When you mix all of that with the perk grid system, there's just so much to play with. It feels like there's a lot of depth to what you can do with builds and what you can create. That kind of depth is something that I always appreciate when systems like this are implemented into a game. Lots of options and the fun of building a weapon or character to be what you want it to be. And lastly, in the positive section, I want to mention that the whole game is very faithful to the established lore of the Aliens franchise. Everything just looks and feels very authentic, and some of the audio effects sounded as if they were ripped directly from the films themselves. Obviously, the game is a budget title, and it isn't the best thing in the world to look at from a technical standpoint, but it all looks how you'd expect it to, and it's more than serviceable in my opinion. It just looks, feels, and sounds very genuine, and seems like it was made by people who understand and respect the source material. I won't spoil any of it here, but this game does reference other Alien games and obviously the films, including the controversial Prometheus. There are a ton of lore items scattered throughout the various missions, and they fill out some of the lore, and there's even some Easter eggs to discover. All of that I think is a very nice touch and a good nod to the fans that helps cement the franchise into what it is today. And so that about does it for the main positive points, so let's move on to the negatives. And so the first and probably biggest issue for me when personally playing this game is the online errors and bugs. In my very first game, I got kicked from the group. I don't know exactly what happened, but I loaded into the game with 2 random players and then was very quickly knocked back to the hub with an error message talking about loss of connection to the host. This happened multiple times, and as far as I can tell, anything that you used before that disconnect is lost and you don't get any of the XP or rewards that you may have gained up until that disconnection. It's definitely very annoying, and if I'm being honest, it's kind of ridiculous that we can't get stable matchmaking or online games that work from the start in 2021. It is pretty disappointing on that front, but it could obviously just be bad luck on my end, and your experience may be far better. Something else that I personally found a bit irritating was how manic the firefights can be. Granted, it's not all of the time, but on the odd occasion it's just so hard to see what's going on, and it makes it difficult to prioritize the right targets and really see what's happening. I know that it's not the biggest deal in the world, and of course, I'm sure some people can easily follow the action all of the time, but for me, it just seems very messy sometimes. One thing that doesn't help with this is the flamethrower weapon. Don't get me wrong, it's very fun to use and it's really quite powerful in the game, but the flame effects are just way too over the top and really do obscure your view. Again, some people will probably be okay with it, but after doing some research, it seems to be a relatively common complaint, so it is what it is. Overall, not the biggest deal, but it was something that I felt was worth mentioning. And really, besides some other very minor things, there isn't much more to say on the negative side of the game, so let's move on to the conclusion and recommendation. As we've said, this game is a budget title, and I think that should be taken into account when considering the quality of a particular game. Of course, there are small indie studios who produce amazing games that launch with 0 bugs or issues. On the other hand, you have huge mega corporations with hundreds of staff who year after year release unfinished, broken, and gambling-fueled failures. Every game for me is a case-by-case basis, and I think Aliens Fireteam Elite falls into the following category. It's a game made by a relatively small team of around 40 people, and you can see that corners were cut during its development. It does have some visual glitches, some bugs that can block mission progression, and some online connectivity issues. However, when those issues aren't happening, I find the game to be very, very fun to play. The corners that were cut to make the game were, in my opinion, superficial. There's really only one cutscene in the game, the NPCs' mouths don't move when they talk to you, and some animations can look a little bit janky here and there. It's kinda like a budget airline, no frills, but it gets you to where you're trying to go. And in all honesty, the moment-to-moment action of just shooting the Xenos is so fun that I found myself worrying less and less about the issues. It doesn't excuse them in any way because, trust me, they are there, but it does make them easier to deal with when the game is that enjoyable on its own. So would I recommend it overall? Based on my experience with it, yes, I would. It's one of those flawed but fun games where just pulling the trigger and shooting stuff is so much fun that the issues don't bother me too much. They do exist and do need to be called out for what they are, but I think that the game is good enough to warrant your time and money. If you're a fan of the Alien movies or the IP in general, then as long as you can go into this understanding that it's not so much of a horror or suspense experience as much as it is an action game, I think you'll have a good time with it, especially for the lower entry price. On the other hand, if you're not a fan of Alien but you perhaps have one or two friends who are planning to get the game, I would honestly recommend that you join them and be that third player. The game is decent on its own, but like most games, it gets infinitely better when played in co-op with friends. I think it's fun enough to be enjoyable to people who've never even seen the Alien films, and it's also very much a Left 4 Dead style game. I know a lot of people still play and enjoy that game to this day, so maybe give this one a chance as well. And lastly, I think that if the issues mentioned in this video would be enough to turn you off of a purchase, then I think that's more than fair. However, if you have any interest in the game at all, then perhaps it would be a good idea to just keep an eye on it, see what kind of patches it receives, and if those issues get resolved enough for your liking, then pick it up. Or if you just don't think it's worth the price, then that's completely up to you. By all means, just wait for a sale or a discount. And there you go, that's the review for Aliens Fireteam Elite. I really do hope you enjoyed this one. I know it was a bit different from what I usually do, and not all of the opinions were mine, but I wouldn't have been able to make this video otherwise, so of course, thanks again to TaylorMade Gaming for helping make this video possible. If you did find the video useful, please let us know and consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. If you want to help support the channel, all the important links will be in the video description down below. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.